Hey everybody, welcome back to your Dawn of Autonomy. I'm still so used to saying Dawn of Drones podcast. I'm Dawn Zoldi, your host and the CEO of P3 Tech Consulting. We're a couple weeks into a month that we've dedicated to this theme of R&D to real world ops. And this month has been sponsored by the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, to whom we are eternally grateful. And today's episode is all about Horizon Aerobotics. So super excited to talk with Denver Hopkins from Horizon to tell us all about the R&D that they've been doing that is going to transition real soon to real world ops and a cool new drone and all kinds of stuff. So stay tuned. But before we get into the meat of things, Denver, why don't you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Great, thank you. Good morning, Don. Very happy to be here. And the topic is one obviously very close to our hearts right now. So my name is Denver Hopkins. I'm a co-founder of Horizon Aerobotics. I've had about 25 years in consumer and enterprise electronics, mostly in the computer industry and enterprise IT industry. But more recently, in the last decade, in aviation, developing electronics and software for general aviation, human carrying, human scale aircraft in that case. And my partner and I decided several years ago that we wanted to transition and leverage those skills in the continuing to grow UAS industry, where safety criticality we think is becoming a bigger and bigger concern. So it was just a natural pathway for us. So.
It is a natural pathway. So tell us about Horizon Aerobotics.
Terrific. So Horizon Aerobotics, we started the company, as I said, coming from a background of general aviation development, developing safety critical software and electronics for certified platforms. And while working in that space, we actually started the company initially as an engineering services company and supporting OEMs and aircraft manufacturers. And while in that space, we kept seeing demand signals from the UAS industry, from drone manufacturers, from some of the large customers of drone manufacturers who were coming to us with their manufacturers in some cases, saying, we need capabilities we don't have, or we're trying to press into more regulated territory. And when we do that, we're bumping up against new constraints, new regulations, new technical challenges. And just with those continued signals, we decided we would shift our entire business to focus exclusively on UAS. We made that transition last year, or started that transition last year, I should say. And we knew it was probably bold at the time. We had no idea. I won't kid you, Don, it nearly put us out of business the first part of last year.
Wow.
But we're happy to say that we've come through that. We don't regret the decision for a moment. We love every day that we're working in this space. We love the companies, the collaborators, the customers. We're just having a blast.
Well, speaking of days working in this space, you're sitting in what looks like a maker space, and this theme is all about R&D to real world ops. So I know we have a super cool video to roll about 60 seconds in our of R&D, or all of your R&D in 60 seconds. So let's go ahead and roll that. I'm going to have you explain what we're seeing.
Terrific. Well, I can hardly say it's all of it. And it started really when my partner, as you can see there, that was his retirement party when he left the Air Force. At that point, we really, kicked in the afterburners and started working on this vision to lay the foundation for what we want to do in the UAS space. And the beginning of that was a drone that we did not see in the market. So that foundation, the HX-1 that we'll talk about some a little later here, is our first foray into that space. It is meant to be that foundation that we build on top of a lot of additional infrastructure, that is drone docks, that is management software. We're really looking at end-to-end workflows, and we're approaching drones as enterprise IT. It's a view we have that they're really they're edge computing devices. They are increasingly part of the enterprise IT fabric. And as we approach the types of customers and use cases we intend to, that is the space we are really aiming and gunning for. Not so much the consumer space or even prosumer, but really on the high end of the enterprise space.
Well, viewing these vehicles as basically flying computers, IT solutions, I think it's the right way to go, right? Because so many people, when this industry started, these things were toys. They were flying, little robotic toys. And honestly, things like cybersecurity were an afterthought. And even today, I think we're catching up. So the fact that, you've been in general aviation, thinking about these things for a long time, working on the R&D on the UAS side, building your own drone, which we're going to talk about a lot here shortly. I think it's really, really smart. So, you mentioned that you took this leap, right, from the general aviation space to the UAS space. What inspired you to do that? Because that was, you said it almost put you out of business in the first year. Boy, talk about stepping off a cliff. What was like your inspiration?
I think the inspiration came in part, I would say, from my co-founding partner. So Nick Salmon's his career Air Force, in his career there, and I don't have the language to speak to it in detail, but he spent the last 12 years, I think, of that working in large-scale drone ops around the world, as an evaluator pilot and operations and various aspects of that. But we were talking, gosh, it must have been almost 7, 8 years ago now, where we were talking about what the commercial drone space would look like a decade down the road.
Yeah.
And the inspiration really, came there about, mankind, humanity, and I would say business in particular, has a way of putting useful technology to work, right? And the build it and they will come mentality might be a naive business strategy, but it's largely true. If you build something useful, commerce and humanity will find a great use for it. And so we're aiming not for where the drone industry is today. We're really looking at where we see the drone industry being 3 years, 5 years, 7 years down the road. And if you compare this as a young technology, as you say, emerging from consumer toys and robotic toys and scaling up into more commercial use cases. But if you compare where we are in a life cycle and a technology journey, we're back where computers were in the late 80s, early 90s, almost pre-web days, where interoperability is not particularly high, standards are still emerging. And as you think about as those spaces start to be filled in, what that creates in terms of possibility and the acceleration of the technical evolution, the manageability, the interoperability, it's going to be tremendous. What we've seen to date is nothing like we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years, I think.
I'm going to date myself here, at the risk of shocking some people possibly. But in the late 90s, I was in college and I took my very first computer science class, where they taught us how to type. And it was this giant computer and we had the floppy disks. And, I had to go to a special room to do this. Today, like we've got these things called, iPhones. We're walking around with mini computers in our hands. And I don't think any of us could imagine life before that. I remember it, and it's so radically, and I agree with you, Denver. I think drones are going to change the world. And, so let me ask you this, your name, Horizon Aerobotics, is that because you're focused on what's kind of over the horizon in terms of this industry?
Well, you may be the first person that's ever asked that. And yes, so it really is that the origin of the name Horizon in particular is focusing about. Horizons are an interesting thing, right? They're an optical illusion, first of all. And the horizon we see, all we have to do is take another step forward to move that horizon back farther, right? And so we can step into the future incrementally, just taking steps forward, or standing a little taller, right? And so Horizon was this notion that we do have the ability, we have agency in our futures, and their technology futures in particular are they can be accelerated, and we can move into those futures faster by simply taking necessary and incremental steps forward. And that's where that name came from.
No, that's awesome. And your tagline for when mission matters most, Love the alliteration, by the way,
Oh.
and the branding. But all of that aside, so you said you're focused on enterprise. What missions are you targeting specifically then?
So terrific. So, by the way, I appreciate that you appreciate the alliteration. So, but the missions we're looking for, when we talk about treating drones as IT, extended IT, we're looking to integrate them into the broader missions of our customers in our target markets. Now, in terms of the capabilities, particularly of the HX1, just in terms of features that we've built into it, it fits most ideally initially coming out of the gate. Public safety disaster response, and you might argue that those are not necessarily large enterprises in the commercial sense, but in terms of the capabilities, very much fits those missions. Also a very simple shift, lateral shift into industrial inspection, again, because of the initial payloads that we've integrated with it. So those are the ones we're going after initially. In industrial inspection, we say much more broadly, because on the industrial space, we're encountering a lot of large enterprises who have incredibly expansive visions about how they plan to integrate drone technology to solve problems at scale. And that's what we're interested in, is how drones can solve problems at scale. And that's what connects it to the large enterprise in that case.
No, I don't. I think the public safety arena, Denver, is one that is also evolving. And, look, I was just at the Drone Responders National Public Safety UAS conference last week. They had over 600 people, so 5 times or 6 times the number from the previous year, 62 vendors, and people, companies, organizations that didn't have drone programs want them. And that's why they were there. And so, as we look around and we see things like Defense Innovation Unit's Blue UAS program, this bunch of states popping up laws relating to Chinese drones and bans on those. Let's assume for a second that people are going to put money behind those bans. In other words, you can ban these things, but all right, all of these folks need to replace their drones now. Will there be incentives? Will there be a boost to the industry? I hope there is, because these kind of unfunded edicts never work out well for people. But I see huge promise in this space. I think public safety, drone as first responder, saving lives, disaster response, all of these things are going to change society in very positive ways. And I think you're right to focus on some of these markets. So let's just jump right in and talk about your drone. So tell us about the HX1 drone.
I will. First of all, as you can see, we didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the name.
Yeah. So what does HX stand for?
Well, it started off as an internal working project name, and it's kind of stuck. So that's the entire backstory on the name.
Okay.
But in terms of that, what we're doing with that product, first of all, is leaning in heavily into portability, yes, but into autonomy, into AI, and into beyond visual line of sight missions. So as we project forward and look at the emerging use cases, many of them emergent already, but many of the future use cases, there's much more demand for autonomy and for beyond visual line of sight missions. Longer distances, heavier payloads, all of these things pushing more and more beyond Part 107 and into territory where reliability, robustness are going to matter much more. So, portability, we think, is kind of baseline. If it's a Part 107 drone, and the HX1 is, it's on the higher end of Part 107 size, but we believe portability is critical there, just to satisfy the needs of many of the operators. But then to bring in the autonomy, to bring in the AI, opens up quite a lot of use cases, and that's really for us the starting point right there. So.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm going to kind of step back for a second, because you made a comment earlier, like creating something, look, you're creating a solution, but I don't think you're in search of problems. I think you're solving problems. So tell everybody what problems it is that you aim to solve, which with the HX1.
Great. So a number of them. One is focusing on mission robustness and reliability. So getting to, as we say, when the mission matters most. For example, talking to some public safety operators. And there's a lot of reasons and potential causes for this type of stuff, but in public safety and in industrial spaces, we talk to a number of operators who tell us, we're very frustrated waiting, minutes sometimes to get a precision and RTK adjusted fix so we can launch our mission as a first responder,
Yeah.
Seconds count, right?
Yes, yes.
As a commercial enterprise working in transportation logistics, minutes, they would argue maybe seconds count too.
Yeah.
So delays matter. So even things like that, which may seem insignificant, but we're listening and our ears are tuned to when somebody says, this frustrates us, to focus on some of those needs. So for example, being able to really rapidly converge and acquire an RTK corrected precision fix so that you can launch quickly but not have to sacrifice the precision that you need for your mission. Solving those problems can be challenging. It can be expensive compared to some alternatives, things like that. But those are things we care about. Again, so when the mission matters most, we will argue that capability, robustness, reliability may trump, in some circumstances, price. Now, value is always critically important, but you brought up the question of bans on Chinese drones. One of the things we're really struggling with in this transition from R&D to production is price and value, right? So you set out to build a lot of value into a platform. That value comes at a cost. The components are more expensive. The integration is more expensive. All of that is challenging. And there are some products out there. I'm going to say there are some great Chinese drone products out there. I've said it, and I'm not one who supports, legislating choice for businesses about, the tools they use to operate and have their businesses be successful. I'm all about incentives, though, for U.S.-based innovation and independence, supply chain independence. And I do hope that we get some support in those regards, because we may never, that's a big word, but we may never be able to deliver the same level of value at the same price as some of the competitors that we have in the world, because it's an uphill challenge in that case. Getting back, though, to some of these capabilities, we want to make sure to have safe aircraft. We want our aircraft to integrate as safely as possible into the national airspace system. We also come from a background of pilots. We care about what 50 to 100 plus pound objects are flying around up there in the airspace. So things like other air traffic awareness and the ability to avoid that traffic, being able to operate. We're in Houston, so we're just a mile from downtown Houston, Texas. Big urban canyons in this area, so being able to operate in GPS-degraded environments matters to us. Being able to operate in GPS-denied environments, even temporarily, matters to us. So these are the types of problems that we are working to make better solutions for in commercially attainable products. We're not the only people working to solve these problems, but we are cramming a whole lot into this one first effort, freshman effort product, and we're very proud of what we're ending up with here.
Well, let's walk through some of these capabilities that are solving some of these problems. I would agree, like GPS denial is absolutely a problem. And here on this slide we see GPS degraded. I mean, heck, the United States Department of Transportation just put out a call for complementary position navigation timing technologies. We're seeing spoofing, jamming across Ukraine and all these battles, Syria, right? The Hamas-Israel conflict. This is a very serious issue, and you're already thinking about this from the start. So walk us through some of these capabilities.
Terrific. So In part, so we mentioned GPS degraded denial in that case, and you're absolutely correct. Certainly, for warfighters and deployed operations, you can see where it matters. So you've got active jamming attempts there, and so we have partnered with technology providers. We have included GNSS technology that has active anti-jamming, anti-spoofing, anti-interference technologies to be as robust as possible against even active threats. In a more benign environment, like you say, we're in Houston, Texas, but you mentioned Department of Transportation. Working, for instance, underneath a very, very large bridge or structure like that can be a very challenging environment for GPS, for instance. So matters in the commercial space as well. We talked about precision navigation and being able to rapidly not sacrifice precision for time. RTK standard, by the way, RTK support standard in the product. Obstacle avoidance, a lot of products out there have it, but again, we consider it table stakes. The hot swappable batteries for productivity, not having to reboot or stop or anything like that. Digital data links. One of the first things that one of the big commercial company here in the U.S. came to us has a huge fleet, largest fleet I've ever heard of in a commercial space of an American drone. Came to us with frustrations about the robustness of their C2 links. That there were quotes for a certain level of performance, but in reality, in their operations, they were getting far, far less than that. So we took notice, from day one. So we're not going to, rely on anything but very robust. Some of the stuff developed under DIU initiatives. So our default radios are, dual band, very robust, very long distance radios, backed up with 5G, also as a standard, and not relying on any of the conventional RC technologies or even just basic Wi-Fi, because they just didn't meet our minimum standards for robustness.
Oh, that's cool. Denver, I don't know if you know this, but DIU actually just put out a CSO, one of their, basically the equivalent of a request for proposals on reliant and robust C2 for drones. So just throwing that out there, buddy. You might want to check that out since you're developing it for your own drone. It might be really cool to get that to be blue, but we can talk about that offline. AI is really the buzzword of the day when you think about it, and you're infusing AI into this platform from the start. Can you talk a little bit more about the onboard AI, the HX1, and how it can enhance real-time situational awareness during operations?
Of course, and here I'm going to take just a moment to give a shout out to one of our technology partners. And we're standing on the shoulders of giants in this endeavor too, but we have leaned very heavily on Modal AI and some of their products.
We love Modal AI, yeah.
So do we. So what we've actually integrated and built this on top of the Voxel 2 platform in that case. So we have the ability to run AI models. We run up to about 6 deep neural networks at a time. Depending on the type of use case and types of models you're deploying and how you optimize that. What you can accomplish is not limitless, but there's a lot of headroom there. There's so much that can be done, from detection and tracking of features in real-time video to detection, let's say, of hazardous material spills in a waterway, detection of smoke plumes at a disaster. So we're also working with a number of our partners. Shout out to another partner, Unspace, here in Houston, that we're working on some specific AI-based solutions for disaster response and community resilience challenges. But there's just so much. Everybody, if you talk to them for 5 minutes, says, AI capabilities, I've got some ideas, I know how we can use this. Particularly in the commercial inspection and even safety space as well.
Well, you mentioned Modal AI, you mentioned a Houston-based partner. You have a number of partnerships that are helping you, that you've been testing out their products as part of the HX1, over the last year or so. Tell us a little bit more about some of these other partnerships as well.
Great. So I'll say in terms of technology, partners rather, and some of the things we are depending on and relying on to build our drone. I mentioned Modal AI. Modal AI, great partner in that regard. Septentrio for a GNSS standpoint. Not only do they have great technology, but their engineers provide great support to people who are integrating those technologies. The folks at Medgelit Propellers, love those guys. Maxim, we're using Maxim motors. I would say back to when the mission matters most, if you were to build a drone, let's say hypothetically, and fly it on Mars, we've got a lot of similarity in product choices and what we've put in our product. It would be a lot easier to replace a motor in ours if we had to, but you kind of get the point of the comparison there. You want to make sound technology choices so that you have the reliability, the precision throughout. As we build on that, that's the foundation that we build on top of. So, anything we do is only going to be as strong as its weakest link. And so that's why all of these partners are so important to us. So there's so many more to, UXV technologies on the ground controller side have very robust controllers. If I look around, I could probably name a dozen more, but to all of you, thank you, you're great, and I will make sure that we do give you all proper credit in due time. So.
And Denver, there, some of these companies are actually Blue UAS framework companies. UXV comes to mind, and I know this because I wrote an article about a year or so ago about some integrations. Modal AI, UXV was in there. I think Doodle Labs with their radio, etc. So that's cool that you're working with some of these companies that have been kind of blessed, if you will, by the DoD already. Department of Defense. And I think that's going to make it easier for you to transition into some serious government work on that enterprise side. So I think lots of opportunities. By the way, let's see. Okay, we got a comment from the audience, 24-hour entertainment. Denver, I like your truth and the reality of drone manufacturing and competitors. I'd consider an HX1. Let me see what floats to the top as time moves on. So it sounds like you've got a fan out there already, Denver. So we got to figure out
We're going to need a lot more of those.
Yeah, I know. You'll get more because at the end we're going to talk about when your big reveal is and how people can reach you. But hang in there, 24-hour entertainment, because you need to be connecting with Denver after this show. Absolutely. So. So let's talk about some of the challenges you've faced, right? So you've got these great partners you've built up over time. You've been doing a year's worth of R&D, but again, go kind of looping back to something you said early on. It almost kind of bankrupted you, like in that first year. So let's talk about that reality of R&D as a brand new startup, trying to create this new drone that you think is going to be game changing for so many people. What did you face?
First of all, without making it too much, let's say, about the financial challenges of making that kind of a business shift, I think more than anything, it was having a sense, an intuitive sense of where we wanted to go and why, but otherwise admitting right now, a year ago, other than our hobbyist interests and our tangential technology experience, we're newcomers to the drone industry, right? So we'll own that right now. That means we start first with asking lots and lots of questions of lots of very informed professional operators and people. We've had some fabulous people step up to spend time with us, invite us into their operations, and tell us what's important to them and what matters and what doesn't. So for us, it has really had to start with a lot of asking and listening, and challenging for me, you might surmise, not talking, sometimes. But getting at the heart of what matters. And there's so much opportunity, Don. So here's a challenge. With so much opportunity and so much possibility,
right?
Focusing, right? We have worked with some companies who have been doing this from day one.
You know what? Niches make riches, this way. I agree. The other thing I see is that companies just doing things so like out of their lane. It just makes stay true to who you are. I love that you have a mission statement. That you're laser focused on what you do. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, it's K Cruz, my buddy out there. This is 24-hour entertainment is one of his many companies. So after the show, I'm going to introduce you guys to each other. And I know, by the way, there's a lot of folks out on LinkedIn. I hear LinkedIn is buzzing. That's what my producer tells me. So jump in the chat, say hello, ask Denver your questions, or just give us positive encouragement. Honestly, we love all of that. So keep the comments flowing. Oh, look, we got FireMech Tech Rob in the chat. So he's saying hello from the first. And by the way, Rob I think he was in your clubhouse, Denver, earlier this month. He's a regular in our clubhouse room, and now he's out there asking this question. From a first responder side, what is the weight, max payload, flight time, hot swap time? So he's asking for all the stats here.
No, I love it.
And time to fly from storage to launch. All of these things matter. So over to you, Denver, to answer all of these questions.
Absolutely. I'll answer some of those right now. And Rob, also at the end of this, I think we have a QR code that'll take you to a page that at the very bottom of that page has all the specs that we have available at this time. As you well know, this will be a very engineer kind of answer. Weight, max payload, flight time. Well, those are kind of a rubber ruler, right? The weight right now is just under about 19 pounds fully loaded with everything. Max payload, depending on the flight time you're trying to achieve, is right around 5 pounds. Max, my partner keeps reminding me, is considerably more, multiples of 5 pounds. You're not going to fly very long, right? That's when I say it's like that rubber ruler, right?
It sounds like it's a lawyer answer. It depends.
Well, a little bit, maybe. But it's also a realistic answer, right? Operationally, even in still air, right? This matters for flight time. Flight time, by the way, not skirting that issue. We're right now around 36 plus minutes with max payload. So we are working on the most recent iteration to expand that a little more. The IP rating, in terms of being rated, it is unrated at the moment. We've been pushing for the highest we can achieve. It's not been tested or validated to any rating, but we are looking right around the 54 to 55 range at the moment, and some changes that we're looking at could improve that even more in that case. But until it's rated, we're not even going to make a claim there. We'll just, be as good as we can in that regard. With regard to the payload, I wanted to talk about this. We have designed, this is not a problem we've solved fully yet, but we want, as part of our ruggedness reliability, we want to have operation with a single engine or single motor failure, by the way. So to do that, we have sized it with significant surplus thrust and power in the remaining available motors, so that if you've got a $50,000 payload hanging on that drone, we're not going to smash it on the way down. Now, we also want to make sure that that motor doesn't fail. So we, relying also on good motor choices, but telemetry from those so that we can predict potential or incipient failures, warn of those before they occur, take, action to prevent that. But again, just walking down that potential fault analysis, worst case, you lose a motor in flight. We want surplus. Controllability is the real challenge in that regard on a quad, as you can imagine. It won't be pretty, but the goal is to get it to the ground without destroying the payload or the aircraft. And please,
what about the battery, Denver, like the hot swap time? What are we looking at there?
When you say the hot swap time, I'm not sure I understand the question. The time of swapping batteries? You can swap
that's
the
what
batteries.
I'm assuming that Rob is talking about. How quick? Well, I guess the first question is, how quick can I launch this thing? And then once it's launched and I need to get it back and swap that battery and get it going again.
And that's how I understood.
He's a firefighter, right?
Yeah, it's recycle time, right? How quickly can land, swap batteries, get back in the air, right?
Yeah.
So in this particular case, I should describe on the architecture from a power supply standpoint. It's also got redundant, power management units inside, so it can operate on one battery or two batteries. And the idea being when you land, you can swap those batteries without having to power down, shut down anything. So your flight controller, your autopilot, everything remains operational. Aircraft is disarmed and in a safe mode, but you can swap the batteries very quickly. The batteries don't require pulling and unplugging things, they snap in place. So you're talking 20, 30 seconds to actually swap the batteries, but landing time, takeoff time is more up to you. You did ask the question, I think, time to fly from storage to launch is under 60 seconds. We've not, timed it to be much, much lower than that, but under 60 seconds. And that requires a rather rehearsed sequence. We'll be very candid about that, but it's possible to do it in under 60 seconds.
Okay, awesome. Great questions. Thanks, Rob. Thanks for joining us. And we also have Mark from the Nevada UAS test site, by the way, who's, of course, thanks me for bringing your tech to his attention. But conversely, doing great stuff out there in Nevada. If you're looking for a place to test things, one of a handful of places, obviously Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma has the Daisy Ranch out in Durant, Oklahoma as well, a handful of others. Shameless plug I'm going to give right now for myself, Law Tech Connect Workshop, AUVSI Expo, Monday, April 22nd. We actually have a panel called State of the States. And we're going to have a handful of these folks from, for example, North Dakota, Ern Ressler from the North Dakota UAS test site, and James Grimsley from Choctaw, et cetera, talking about, what they're doing and in their various states. So lots of opportunities out there for folks like Denver, for anybody listening, to do R&D that can lead into real world ops, at all of these amazing locations. So
allow me briefly, Don. Nevada, Choctaw, Lone Star, all about as much as you can get in our backyard here. So your top's on our hit list, and there are things that we need to be able to test in ranges for particularly longer range beyond visual line of sight. So we'll be in communication soon.
All right, awesome. And I'm going to skip ahead to one of my last questions. I'm just going to ask it now since I think it's relevant. Are you going to AUVSI Exponential, or where will you be?
Yes, we do not have a booth there.
Are you running around?
I'll be running around there for sure.
Okay, good.
So
but this is important for people to know because everybody out there listening, including Mark and our other friends out there, just know that Denver's going to be there, and set a time to get together. I mean, nothing like having an in-person conversation. There is a follow-on question here. It might be a little too deep, I don't know, but I'm going to ask it. Is there an index AI calculator built into the process weight to flight time to distance and return to home with weather integrated into that calculation? Is that something that you're doing?
I love the question. Partially, the answer is yes, but all of that, no, and it will be. So no, this is
there
what
you go.
This is
well, so the other company I need to introduce you to, Denver, is True Weather Solutions. Don Bershoff, the Weather Don. Just saw him in person last week. Always great to hang out with Don and my buddies from the East Coast. But there's nobody doing weather better than Don and his team at True Weather. So
weather is such a factor. I mean, take ag applications and just a simple problem of dispensing a chemical in a breeze and trying to get that chemical on a target.
No joke.
So we think a lot about weather and its implications and emission, but in terms of integrating all of that in the way that was described here, no, we haven't done that yet.
Yeah, definitely don't want any kind of toxic plumes flowing around when they're, dispersing some kind of chemicals from a drone, for sure. All right, so we talked about some of your partners and maybe let's talk about some future collaborations. Union Pacific, can you talk about that? Is that something you want to discuss?
I can maybe superficially talk about that.
Yeah.
The reason I'll say superficially is again, a shout out to one of our local partners here, Unspace. Unspace is a consulting firm that works on particularly complex challenges in disaster response, community resilience, Sometimes these are things that span multiple agencies, lots of stakeholders. And it is actually through them that we have had the opportunity to meet and work with UP. So don't want to, tell too much that we shouldn't, but I think it's not inappropriate to say that, yes, UP obviously as a railroad, one of the largest, maybe the largest in the country at least, if not in the world. Safety is a huge concern for them. And if you begin to think about, and I've been extraordinarily impressed with all the ways that not just Union Pacific, but most of the major railroads are really leaning into drone technology as a
Oh,
pathway,
absolutely. Yep.
to solving some of their safety challenges. There's
Yep.
lots of inspection things like that, but even just in a rail yard, it's hard to imagine until you've spent time in a humping yard just what a hazardous environment that is.
No kidding.
And to talk to them about their visions, their ideas. In some cases, they are on the fringe of what's feasible right now. But that's just exciting to us because
Yeah.
that says you're looking well forward into the future. You're very realistic about what is and isn't possible today, and there's a pathway to get there, and they're leaning into that. And so, yes, that's, in that particular case, it's around safety in particular.
Yeah.
They have a culture that prioritizes safety for what are probably pretty obvious reasons
Yeah.
in a hazardous industrial environment. And they are looking at all the ways they can leverage drone technology to enhance safety for not just the communities they operate in, but for their men and women working on the ground, in the yards. And the ideas that they have are just really fabulous. And that's where I have to draw the line. I probably shouldn't talk about some of those, but so. But we're very, very excited and privileged to be working with them and with our partner.
So another group looking out on the horizon. So there you go. So we're getting towards the end of the show. I knew our time would fly. No pun intended. So question then, drum roll, when can people expect to see this HX1, my friend? When will we be able to,
I would rather have
touch and
any
feel it?
other question. I'd rather have any other question right now. The single biggest challenge.
Give us an approximate and like,
It,
what do they say? It's better to under promise and over deliver, right?
confidently in 2Q, we overpromised a little bit and caught ourselves at the end of first quarter with some kind of late breaking mechanical engineering changes that created some challenges getting the new airframe ready in time, and then that means new flight testing, the whole thing. We're taking advantage. Forgive us, Dawn, but this is our last chance to have the excuse or the advantage, if you will, of being in stealth mode. We have one opportunity to make a first impression when we unveil.
I totally agree.
And we are not going to squander that. So it will be in 2Q, and when we do it, I'll tell you now, you'll be the first to know. So.
All right, well, very good. Everybody stay tuned for more because there's going to be a big reveal here in the near future. So I'm really excited to see this thing. You guys have been working so hard on it, and it's such an honor to be able to talk to you about it and all the R&D that went into this and the real world ops that are going to be made possible and made even better by this new drone. So you mentioned that QR code. Let's go ahead and pop those up so everybody can learn a little bit more about the HX1 and also apparently request a demo.
Yes, so we are planning a roadshow. So once we unveil it, part of that process is going to be traveling around the country in different markets where we have enough concentration or interest to demo the product. So if you're interested in that, please do sign up.
All right, very good. And we're 1 minute out, so I'm going to cede the floor to you, Denver, to, anything we missed, anything you wanted to say, or just how you want to close the show.
Oh, I don't know that there's anything we missed there. I just want to say again how much we love working in this community, Don, with you, your team, people we met at a show we were at in Miami. There's too many shows going on right now. We can't be in enough places at one time. But looking forward to meeting people at AVSI. Look for me, hit me up on LinkedIn beforehand. Let's make it a point to get together and meet. And other than that, just, a rising tide floats and raises all ships. And so we're here to support everyone else in our industry as well as we build not just products, but build an industry.
I love that. And how can people reach you, Denver, if they want to connect now and then possibly at AUVSI Expo?
Well, my name is not a popular one, so I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, Denver Hopkins. Our website is horizonaerobotics.com. Those are probably the easiest ways, and that's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for chiming in. We love the chat today. We love the connections that are being made. That's what this show is all about. We're looking forward to seeing you in person, Denver, at Expo on the floor. In the meantime, everybody have a great remainder to your week. By the way, next week, special time, because we have a guest from Australia, and our normal time would have been 3 in the morning for her. We've got wildlife drones coming on the show next week as we finish out this month of R&D to real world ops, and it's going to be a wild ride, again, pun intended. So we are out here, everybody. Have a good one.